are in certification of the compliance with the open meetings law because they have gone out. Are there any changes to the meeting agenda?
No, there's not. But just a minute, Cindy, please. For the people that aren't here, we're gonna go around the table and say who is here because can they see us? Or how does it work?
Oh, there's the camera right there.
Okay,
Do you want to put it closer on Mr. Kinsley?
I'm sure they're here.
Oh, okay.
Well, we have Mike Olson here from IT. We have Cindy here from the clerk's office. We have Chairman Tweed Schuman here. We have Derek here from the airport. We have Tim here from maintenance. We have Gary Gephardt here from highway. We have board supervisor Helen Dennis here. We have board supervisor Mark Helwig here. And I'm Ron Kinsley. All right, we've done the roll call. We're compliance with certification of open meeting law. The agenda is set. Number 5 is minutes of the previous meeting of March 11th.
Can I get a motion to approve those?
There's a motion by Ms. Dennis, second by Mr. Helwig to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 6, election of chair and vice chair. Cindy, you may have it.
Any nominations?
Nominate this guy, Mr. Ron Kinsley.
I'll second that. Any other nominations?
Dale Olson raised his hand.
Dale Olson raised his hand.
Dale Olson will put his hand down as he was about to do the same thing, but would request that we change it to a motion that nominations be closed and cast a unanimous ballot for Ron Kinsley.
That would be the next step. Yes, thank you. That concludes the motion for
Okay.
chair and representative for chair. Thank you.
Nomination is closed. Take it away.
Now we'll have nominations for vice chair. Is there any nominations for vice chair? I'll make a motion to nominate Mark Helwig as vice chair. Is there any other nominations for vice chair? And third time, is there any other nominations for vice chair?
I'll second your motion.
There's a second by Ms. Helen Dennis. How do I know if Mr. Olson has his hand up?
I thought we did a voice vote.
Yeah, we are, but I just want to make sure that you're involved, that's all.
I'm involved.
So I'll make a motion that we close nominations with a unanimous vote for Mark Helwig as vice chair. Congratulations, Mr. Helwig.
Thank you.
Congrats, you two.
Thank you for your support.
Number 7, public comment. Does anybody have anything for public comment?
Linda Zillmer.
Ms. Zilmer?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing for the remote opportunity to participate. As things go forward with discussion on a second courtroom and options, I would hope that the committees discuss the statutorily required courthouse safety committee that the judge is required, I believe, to have. And if things are moving forward, shouldn't the judge also be upholding his responsibilities and having that committee set and being involved? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zilmer. There's nobody else out there, correct? Thank you.
Cheryl Bechter is listening, but not, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Number 8 is chairman's remarks. We're going on to number 9, Sawyer County Airport report. Derek, we have a few things we have to cover. I guess I should have told you Mr. Huff was here. He said he had to go back to his office. He has to deal with some stuff, but he'll be listening again, so he can chime in later. Thank you. Derek?
Well, I'm gonna hit you with a few things tonight. There's a couple interesting things in the report that have happened in the last 2 months. Put in there. Any questions on the report? Any discussion you want to have about anything on there? Or talk about it in the agenda, some of the other items that I discussed in the report.
What stands out that we need to know presently, please?
Well, the big one is we got two things. It's going to be on D and E, two decisions that need to be made. And tonight or in the near future, regarding the funding that's coming to the county airport. Can I just move on to
Yes.
that?
Unless anybody got any questions regarding the report. Thank you. Go ahead there.
Starting with the CARE Act funding, the Sawyer County Airport's getting $30,000. There's 2 or 3 different ways that the county can spend that money. Mike Keith and Tom Hoff and myself had a meeting with the BOA on Monday morning to discuss what that money is capable of doing. It has to get used for airport-related things. The thing that was discussed with Mr. Hoff was, and the easiest way to apply that funding is to just use it for operating expenses at the airport. Since Sawyer County Airport operates at a deficit, less income than expenditures each year, we just have to come up with a paper trail. Whether it be electrical expenses, heating expenses, or airport manager salary expenses, we have to provide the bill essentially for those services that add up to the $30,000, which will help in the subsidization, whatever you want to call it, big words, of the airport. The other way the funding could be used is for potentially applying it towards the county's 5% project as well. And I talked with Tom and Mike about that. Coming up next is the ramp project. There's additional federal monies coming in for that, but the county needs to prepare for 5% matching funds one way or another on that project. And go ahead.
Derek, how much is that 5% of that ramp project? Approximately.
If you come here, if you look on the sheet that's on there, cost projections, which is, this is just 30% design plans. And usually they are on the high side. It's just over $1 million. And that's for the 400 by 100 foot ramp to get reconstruction, plus the 25-foot taxiways all the way through the fences, new ground loops. We've had some ground loop issues in the past that we've had all the way out to the road. There was opportunity to try to push forward that ramp project to this year. Things didn't fall into place in time for it to happen. It's just easier to kind of bundle everything together into these projects. One of the things you'll notice on there is the beacon light. That's $40,000 potentially. That's going to get inserted into this project to get repaired and replaced because our beacon light is toast.
Derek, this is Ron Kinsley. For those on the phone or whatever, I understood that this CARE Act, we are going to have a lot more money coming in that would help cover some of our 5%,
Well,
or is that not correct?
well, it's possible yet. The 2020 federal funding is 100% federally funded.
Right.
Okay, so by the time that this project comes around, usually the fiscal year of entitlement dollars come in July or August. That's when they're available. Typically, to get that $150,000, the county has to match a 5% for that 150, which adds up to $7,500. A little bit stronger than that now. But we still have 2017, 2018, and 2019 entitlements backrolled. Okay, if we utilize those entitlements, the county has to obligate their 5% share
Right.
for those years worth of entitlements. And those entitlements are going to get used as part of this project. Furthermore, as far as apportionment goes at the state still has some of 17 and all of 18s and most of 19s available as well. So with the state using their apportionment dollars, they get, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars for apportionment projects. It'll be at the state's discretion come spring of 2021 if we approve this project, who's going to get the 100% federal funding, which airports.
Okay.
Because the state would give us 17s, 18s, or 19s apportionment funding, which comes with the 5% match.
Okay. Let's review here just a little bit, please. Back in March, I think we were at the point we were going to have on the agenda for April, which we didn't have a meeting in April, a resolution to move forward with this. But then communicating with Mr. Huff, correct me if I'm wrong, we had to appropriate the funds and that was taking some time to get that paperwork done. And now we've got a new board appointed and I think that might have slipped through the cracks, which needs to get back on the agenda so we can get that step taken care of in June, I would guess. So that would take care of the ramp and the runway, stuff like that, correct?
Well, I believe that in talking with Mike and Tom on Monday, the amount of the 5% for this project, oh, Tom, he wants to stop.
Yes, go ahead, Tom, Mr. Huff.
Yes. Yeah, since we talked the last time, we did have the meeting with the BOA. I think the money that you were referring to that we're getting through the CARES Act, there's $30,000 that the airport is getting. And the plan currently is to use that funding for operations in 2020, which is the cleanest way to get that money utilized from the BOA. So that gets used for 2020. We do have the 8,500 from 17, 18, 19 in the CIP for this project. So then what we would do is within the 2021 CIP fund the remainder, which worst case is about 25,000, and that would be included in the CIP for 21, which get rolled in with other projects and funded that way. So, you know, most of it comes from the grant, the 5% that we need to cover. We've got some stockpile. We'll have to come up with about 25,000 worst case scenario, which would be in the 21 CIP.
Okay. Question. Mr. Colson,
Two hands up, Dale and Linda.
just a moment. We're gonna go with Mr. Helen Dennis first, please.
Okay, Gary, can you go back over the apron and the cost of the ramp? We have 5% of that, but what's the total?
The total for the apron, they've got the number on the bid here at 583,000. The taxi lanes being 156,000, and they're going to do some rehabilitation on the concrete ramps, 34,000. The beacon lights, 40,000. All adds up to 815,000, and then there's another $200,000 worth of engineering and administration on top of that. That brings it up to $1 million. Originally, the project, when we had talked about it, was closer to $1.5 million when we were discussing and trying to pave everything under the sun down in front of the hangars. And that went by the wayside because we couldn't get it through the FAA eligibility process. It wouldn't pave more than the 25-foot wide area down those taxi lanes. We tried to get it pushed through because it would benefit us from snow removal and water drainage perspective, but it simply wasn't eligible, and that brought the project cost down from 1.5 to 1.
All right, Mr. Olson. Mr. Olson, did you have a question or a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to hit unmute. I have a couple of just questions for Derek.
Yes.
You said the beacon is toast. Is that the tower or the light? Which?
Well, both. The beacon light tower has been leaning in the recent years, year and a half, and we've been having issues. It's over 25 years old. The county owns it solely, and it's a navigational aid that was used for 25 years. 20 years it was Sawyer County's responsibility to maintain it because it was put up with federal dollars. That's a 20-year timetable that gets associated with the maintenance of all equipment that gets purchased with federal funding. Simply put, I think the ground is unstable underneath the concrete pad, and it's an outdated, very heavy beacon. The beacon up at top, I think somebody said weighed 1,200 pounds. And new beacon lights are tipped down now. They just mechanically, the beacon will tip all the way down. You can change the bulbs out. Whereas this one, you have to send a man all the way up to the top, and it's a difficult climb. And we tried doing it this spring, and the young fella that tried climbing up the pole got about halfway up. The pole started to kind of sway back and forth, and I looked and see the ground was starting to move, and young fellow came back down the pole. So Beacon Light is an essential part of airport operations. Pretty much all airports have them. Ours is just taken out, needs to be replaced, and it's going to get replaced as part of this project. One other note is we have talked, Tim and I have talked, Mr. Hoff as well, about hiring out somebody, a crane operator, to lift the top up off of the pole and set it down on the ground. And we haven't got bids for it yet, but if the county does choose to do that, just from mitigate the liability of potentially falling down the phone, those costs will be reimbursed back once we start this project from the BOA. So there might be a cost for the county to pay for it up front, but it'll get reimbursed back.
Okay, thank you. So it wasn't a maintenance issue as far as why this thing is gone. It was a building issue in the first place. You think it's a subgrade issue. I understand that. The second part of my question was, with the price of fuel now, is the fuel sales for the airport, is that diminishing by any great standard?
Well, if you want to talk about the FBO, yeah, the sales, the total gross sales will probably be cut in half from one year to the next, but the net profit and the percentage that gets paid back to the county stays the same. Margins don't change in the fuel, but the total cost does. So I mean, the gross number at the end of the day for the FBO will significantly decrease, but the margins are still the same. Just the cost of the product is less. The percentages that the Sawyer County has as part of the FBO contract aren't affected by the price of fuel to speak of at all.
Oh, Sawyer County does not receive all the profit for the fuel sales.
Correct.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Mr. Olson, this is Ron Kinsley, that was taken care of when we redid the contract last year. We spent a lot of time with part of that, and so that's
So
a
we
change.
used to get the entire fuel sales profit, and we do not anymore,
We get a percentage.
as opposed to getting the entire profit. Okay.
We're just gonna leave it go at that, there's a percentage. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Linda,
Ms. Zumber?
I'm sorry, I did not mean to raise my hand. It must have been a cursor problem here.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go on to letter E, then. There's no question. So we pretty much covered that, didn't we?
Mr. Chairman, I can say, I have just one more thing for Derek. Derek, you said the operational expenses is always a deficit for you, correct?
Correct.
Does the county subsidize your operational deficit?
Well, from
And to what extent?
From an airport manager standpoint, yes. From the FBO standpoint, not at all. Annual operating costs for the airport are about $100,000, and the airport generates in revenue directly back into the airport and back into the county bank accounts, $30,000 to $40,000. This year, it's probably going to be more than $50,000. So there's a deficit there that the county has to subsidize the airport for the ongoing operations of the airport. It brings in less than what it costs from a monetary standpoint, dollars to dollars. Economic impact is a completely different discussion.
Yep, I understand that.
Mr. Helwig?
I don't recall, was that a set amount or was that?
Well, let's see, it's a set amount, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Huff, do you have that answer?
It's 12 cents on the gallon.
For fuel, but I think he's talking about other,
I'm talking about the deficit portion.
what we subsidize.
Good thing.
Right.
Ron, did you have that?
what was the question?
The question was, is there a percentage or is there a certain amount that we pay the airport on a yearly basis? I don't recall.
Well, we don't pay the airport. We have a budget for operational costs for the airport. And that I think is about 100,000 a year now. And we get revenue now on different things that we didn't used to get through the negotiations of the contracts that we did last fall and this year. And we should get those contracts to the new members, Mr. Wilson and Ms. Taylor. There's the management agreement, and then there's the fixed-based operator agreement. And so that's a separate business where they do the fuel sales out of. So we've never gotten all of the fuel sales revenue as a county. That's always been the FBO. But we did negotiate a higher rate back to the county, not only for fuel, but for some of the other revenue generating activities that happen at the airport, so that the county can share in those revenues. We can get you those contracts so that you can see what those percentages are on the other revenue items as well.
Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Olson, did you pick up on that part of the fuel?
I did, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Let's move to letter E. Is there anything else we have to cover in letter E, please?
Do we need, does it need to be on the agenda to be approved? Can that happen tonight? Is that something that just Tom can do? Because the committee is already through the process of petitioning for the project, approved for the project to at least get to this point.
We have to do a resolution for it. We're gonna look at trying to get it on the agenda for next month. Thank you.
What to do with money, you gotta do with it.
Is there anything else we need to deal with the airport? Funding exhibit? I'm not sure. I don't think there is. Mr. Huff, is there anything we're missing for the airport?
I don't believe so, no.
So letter F is the beacon light, which Derek has already talked about. And letter G is the BOA project engineering of the projects, which most of us know about. Mr. Olson, probably we can bring you up to speed as we go through meetings. I think that this committee has learned a lot about airports. I know this committee's learned a lot about airports as we've gone through things, and Derek has helped educate us through things. And it's been a learning project for the committee and Derek, I believe. I don't think I'm out. Okay. Anything else you want to add, or any other questions we want for Derek? Okay, now thank you, Derek. We're going to move to number 10, Highway Commissioner's report.
Anyone have any questions on the report? Just a few
Thank you,
updates. We finished the crack sealing project on 63, and we proceeded on to another project for the state on Highway 77 from Peters Road heading east. We started that today, and that's one of those performance-based maintenance contracts where if we profit or if we, revenues over expenses, we get to retain that money. So hopefully we bid it really high, as high as they would allow us to. The road's beyond crack sealing, but that's not our call. That was their directive. So, and then of course the culvert pipes, they went really well. And that's in conjunction with hospitals putting a bike path along that roadway there. And during the survey, they noticed the undermining on the slope, and it was culvert pipes that pulled apart. So those are all secured. And I've got 2 flaggers coming. The 2 flaggers are coming in tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. I'm going to do the state certification flagging, which is required for any flagging on state highways. That's about a 3-4 hour session. And then I'm going to have one of my seasonals starting Monday, and one of the flaggers starting Monday. The other seasonal is starting June 2nd. Another flagger starting June 2nd. We still have we have an employee who we actually conducted interviews. We've got 2 vacant positions at the highway department. Only one of them is authorized to fill. But with COVID-19, we placed everything on hold, and it's just a wait and see on that. I did prepare an organizational chart for everyone, and my luck, I spilled coffee on my way over here. So anyway, there's some coffee. I can always email these back to the members. And as you can see, looking at it, Dale, I'll email you and, the two of them.
Susie's on too.
Okay, and Susie, I could get her one as well. I just need to get the emails. When you look at the organization chart, we have 6 state section routes and 9 county routes. And you can see on here, we're pretty lean as far as operators, so we really need the 2 positions, but we've only been authorized for the 1, so that's how we're gonna proceed as soon as the dust settles here. Hopefully before we get too hard into our summer schedule.
Ms. Dennis?
The winter shopping around.
I had a Hayward employee retire, didn't get filled, and I had a winter shop employee retire. That didn't get filled. We interviewed for the 1 position, for one of the 2 positions.
And,
Mr. Howard?
and the position was for which location?
Well, we had a vacancy at both of them.
Right.
We're prioritizing. I think we're probably gonna hire one for winter. Because I'm sorry, out of the Hayward shop, because we really don't have any spare guys. Winter doesn't have any spare guys, but there's a guy in Radisson that lives close proximity to Winter. So he can always go over there. I mean, we're talking bare bones operation here. That's how we're structured, is over around winter maintenance. So.
Yeah, I think I was kind of going along with Helen there with the 2 people in winter.
Yeah, but
There's
if you look over here, there's more.
There's actually a 3rd person at the winter shop that is up in the position of road foreman. And then there's one of the people in the Radisson shop that could swing over to the winter shop. Hayward only has 3 people outside of there. You can see on the Hayward shop.
Mhm.
We have 3 plow routes, and we have 3 state routes out of Hayward. You can see we have no extra employees. This is on perfect attendance.
Yeah.
Right.
I got you guys.
And perfect attendance is a rarity.
Gotcha.
That's something you've been dealing with.
Yeah, we've been dealing with for several years. But I will say this, we did hire on 2 LTEs this winter for winter snow plowing, and that was invaluable. Hopefully we can repeat that going into this winter season, get some good qualified, and they were good qualified LTEs. In fact, we hired one as a permanent. So that's our safety valve there, is LTEs.
Do you think they would be able to come back? I mean,
One gentleman we hired on permanent.
The other guy?
The other guy will come back.
Thank you.
Mr. Olson, there'll be a copy of this in with the minutes that'll be scanned in, so you'll have that available to look at. Did you say Ms. Taylor was on? Ms. Taylor, that'd be the same for you as what Gary from the Highway Department handed
I
out.
can get a clean, unstained copy to you.
Thank you. Fund balance report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we just dispose of the highway report, I just wanted to ask Mr. Getter, in light of the Carlson Detman wage study, are you still getting a great number of applications like you used to? You used to get hundreds.
No. We don't hardly get any applications, but that's part of the problem. That's one of the reasons why the hiring has been put on hold and hoping to possibly re-advertise, because we didn't get ideal candidates for the position.
Thank you.
Good question, Mr. Olson. Okay, we're going to fund balance.
You'll see on the fund balance, Janine Abrick, our office manager, has finished the closing, and she's got 3 months of fund balances here. I believe she has the December final here. So, as it progresses, she'll get caught up to April and May.
Does anything stands out that we need to be aware of?
The thing that really stands out to me is winter maintenance, how much we expended last year on winter maintenance. It was a lot of money. We got hit really hard in the front part of the winter. The back end was not so bad.
So what do we do to overcome that?
Well, there's not much we can do. There's, we just run deficits in those fund balances, but we just hope our bottom line, it's okay. We do, if you look at construction, road construction balance, that's pretty healthy. And then you go down to winter maintenance, so internal transfer.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see we have 632,000 negative balance in winter maintenance. Yeah, we've got a balance in road construction of 2.52 million.
Yeah.
With, I believe it's I can't remember off the top of my head, it was like 1.6 expenditures for this year budgeted.
Okay.
Or 1.4, it might even be 1.4, but I think we got cut a little bit. So.
So the budget that we have today, how does that compare to 5 years ago? As in employees and dollar amount that we use to resurface roads?
Don't have that information available to me right here, but it's not going up. We actually took a real $200,000 decrease in levy last year. And then the 2 years prior to that, we had a budgeted $200,000 deficit.
Okay.
To come out of fund balance.
Yeah. Unbound. Let's move on to letter C, highway overtime report.
You can see the overtime report. We're quite a bit, like I said, and it showed in the winter, we're quite a bit behind in overtime, which is a great thing for management. On both state and county. Of course, the state, we get reimbursed 100%, but you can look at the county wages. We've expended $7,000, this is through April, $7,773.04. And she doesn't have a cumulative on here, but I can do some quick math, 12, 14, 15, about 16,000 we had in previous year. So we're less than half. And I think the same bears out with the state too. 7.4. Yeah, it's not as, but close to half on the state system too. But that was a lack of snow in the tail end of winter. We went quite a while there with no snow.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I got a question for Gary.
Yes.
Gary, what's the progress with the Whitefish Bridge on that Highway E project?
Okay, the Whitefish Bridge is, I just signed what they call the design study report and submitted it into the DOT. So that basically, it's one of the key documents we need approved by DOT before we can proceed with right-of-way acquisition. The LCO, the Tribal Preservation Historical Officer, has already submitted his report, Brian Bissonette. So the archaeology is done. I believe we're real close to getting the environmental approval. Once the DSR is approved, then I can do the acquisition right away. I didn't bring it before the board tonight, but I will next meeting. And that will be, I had a sales market study done by the firm of Steigerwell. So I'm going to do the acquisition because I'm federally certified to do right-of-way acquisition. So I'm going to do the acquisition for Sawyer County. I can't start anything except I could have a sales study done. So I got ahead of the game on that. Once I get the green light, then I'll send out my notifications of rights of landowners under eminent domain, get the right-of-way acquired. I have 4 parcels in each quadrant of the bridge. minimal takings. We're gonna do them as permanent limited easements. So you don't lose your you lose the use of the property, which you didn't have to begin with, to pay for the water. And then, we'll set a price that has to be approved. And the report has a recommended price per acre. And this committee approves it as part of the whole right-of-way acquisition process. So schedule-wise, it's gonna be a hard sell for 2020. I'm pushing Tweed, I'm trying as hard as I can because it's really costly for us to have that bridge like that for winter maintenance. Our trucks are too heavy to go across them. We don't have a smaller truck. We have to subcontract it out and it's not cheap.
And it's one lane right now, correct?
It's one lane with stop signs, that's correct. And it's one
Have we
lane
had
with-
any incidents there that you're aware of?
Well, none that have been reported to me. Ones I've read on Facebook, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, people running the stop sign when other people are waiting, that were there at the bridge first.
Yeah, that's what concerns us, the
Yeah.
safety.
So you've got the one lane that's, we're necking them over in the one lane. Someone's coming from one way and in the lane that goes straight, they're flying right through. But there was law enforcement was there, I believe, yesterday, the day before. So.
Are you waiting on any tribal support or any money
No,
from the tribe?
no,
What about
that's
the
a
other,
good point.
what about the other projects?
I did receive a letter of support from the tribe on the bridge, and that went up to BIA. And what the BIA is doing is they're gonna put this bridge in their program as well. And so what could happen, which is a great thing for Sawyer County, is I already have approval for funding on this bridge, 80% federal, state, 20% Sawyer County. LCO can put this in the BIA's program. If it gets approved, and there's a real good chance it'll get approved, then they're allowed to get that 20%. So
Good. If I can assist with that, we should push
you
for
guys
that.
are ready. You've done as much as you. We're in a waiting game right here now, Tweed, because I've been working with Dave O'Donoghue from BIA in Ashland. So he's submitted all the necessary paperwork. We got the resolution. We're waiting now for final, what they call it, PSE, the plan specification estimates. We're waiting on that before he can put his actual request in, because we don't have a specific enough dollar amount yet. We're running on preliminary engineer's estimates right now. Once we get that, then we can proceed with the tribe line of it. And then also a good point is I've been contacted by the tribe. They'd like to do a cooperative on this federal program. U.S. Builds. It's a very, very competitive grant. And then I've taken the time and gone online and looked at some of the guidelines and requirements for this program. And I'm sorry, you guys, it's way out of my league. And I relayed it on to the LCO and also BIA. BIA responded that it's out of their league. They don't have anyone on staff. So, but you indicated today you might have someone tweet that would be willing to take.
We do in our grants department, yeah, we're gonna go after that. Because the same person got us many dollars in a transit program grant, so.
Yeah.
And it's what, $1 million in rural
$1 million
areas?
minimum for rural areas. It's $1 million minimum. So the project that we put together for the multimodal local supplement, which we didn't get, was pushing 800,000 or 800. I can't remember the exact dollar amount. So we wouldn't meet the dollars, but I talked to Tweed this morning by email, we communicated, and I said we could extend that project that they put in for, which was from Frog Road out to County Road A. We could pull it all the way back to Casino and go from County K to A, and we would have the dollars. We more than did it. But then in conjunction with that, we can also double dip into another grant safety program I was just notified we're eligible for, provided we pave the travel way. They would pay for the portion outside of the travel way, 5-foot paved shoulders with the rumble strips in them, because of the high amount of runoff road accidents that we have through that section of the County Road K was not eligible. We just said that was also a concern of the tribe. K is not eligible, not enough even though we just have a double fatality, it's, you know,
Understand.
Any questions for Mr. Gephardt? Mr. Olson, you have anything else for Mr. Gephardt?
I don't, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, do you have anything else for the highway commissioner?
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Maintenance, Tim. Number 11, maintenance report.
Any questions on maintenance report?
Anything stands out we need to know?
Not that I'm aware of.
I have a question. Maybe change the mic a little bit. I thought one time we were setting up this room so they could use this in the court system. But if I recall, something fell through, but I don't remember what fell through.
That, the person for CCAP, Warrants VM, said they don't allow network connections for a shared room. It has to be exclusively under the purview of the court.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Ms. Dennis.
Okay, I don't know who asked on this, but how did the vote hold up? You like so?
oh, good. Excellent.
We've been in there.
Yeah, Brad and I went up there, toured it right about as bad a time as you can get it. Yeah. We're gonna go up there and do some minor patchwork. I mean, it's really good.
Good.
You can drive up there with, I would say, with any vehicle.
Good.
Just our usual question, how's everything doing down south?
No, Jibble, it's going good. You know, like I said, we're waiting on the signage because, first they had the sign company of people on furlough. Sign's been made for a long time, for the building, and then they had their truck breakdown, their install truck. We got a new truck, so probably a week and a half. The only thing that's gonna change that is, they're doing the rock work down there. They started the first part of the week, gonna finish it between tomorrow and Friday. And then, they gotta get they're gonna take the, tracking pad out, keep that in there. There's gonna be a little bit of time there, tomorrow or Friday. EMS isn't gonna be able to run out of that driveway. So, I talked with the, Billings Town Chair a while back. While they're working on the tracking pad, there'll be parking rates down at Town Hall. And then also, they're gonna hit about a week and a half as soon as the asphalt starts, that they're not gonna be able to run out of there, either. And so it's gonna be the same thing. They're gonna shuttle, I guess, from the base plan, they have them shuttled from the living quarters, if they're in the living quarters, down to the parking lot of the Town Hall. Yeah, no, but otherwise, yeah, it's going good. I mean, building wise, it's been good, and
When do you think it's gonna start being paid?
they had given a rough estimate of the middle of this month, so they finished the rock work today. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be the next week and a half, 2 weeks, so we finish up the asphalt.
So we probably should have on the agenda for the month of June about having an open house.
Yeah, because that kind of got delayed because, with COVID-19, but yeah, I think things should be ready to go pretty soon, so.
Tim, what's on the sign?
It's, Sawyer County with, I can't remember now if it's a 5x10 sign. It's gonna be Sawyer County with Sawyer County logo. And then just like if you look at the maintenance graph, it says maintenance underneath, it'll say ambulance underneath.
For letter A, does anybody have anything else? Mr. Olson? Do you have anything else for letter A?
Not on letter A, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor? Do you have
No.
anything? Okay, thank you. Gonna move on to letter B, additional court discussion and possible action. And for this, we have Mr. John Kane is on the phone also. Mr. Huff, do you have something you want to enter into this with?
Yeah, let me just do a brief intro here. Just as a bit of review, Sawyer County has established a need for a potential Second Circuit Court based on the activity in the court and the caseload that runs through Sawyer County. Based on reports statewide, Sawyer County is one of the leading counties as far as caseload per judges. So recently there was a bill passed in the state of Wisconsin allowing 12 circuit courts throughout the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, speak up a little bit, please.
Hello, okay. So there's 4 new circuit courts around the state in each of the next 3 years. Sawyer County may be in line for that 3rd year of getting an additional circuit court. In order to get that circuit court, we do need to have facilities ready and available at the time that judge takes a seat. So the planning that has taken place in looking at the possibility of a location for a second courtroom, we hired Venture Architects, who's courthouse specialists, to design what could be possible on Sawyer County property. And so they came back last fall with 3 options, 2 attached to this building and 1 across the street attached to the jail. The ranges of pricing of those were between $5,000 and $15,000. Recently, the county board decided to take a look and see if there are other options available within the existing footprint of the county courthouse, if that second courtroom could be accommodated within this building, and what would that mean? So we had Mr. Kane and Sam. I won't even try and butcher your last name, Sam. So the meeting we had last week, the county board put forth some ideas on what potentially they would think of as viable options. Mr. Kane and his staff then took those ideas and tried to come up with some plans for a 4th option or more options actually, other than the 3 presented earlier. So I'll let Mr. Kane and staff have the floor and kind of present the options that you are putting forth today, which will then be presented also at the county board next week. But your feedback tonight will be important as far as what of these options are brought forward and how they are presented. So go ahead, Mr. Kane.
Okay, thank you. This is John Kane. Tom, are you able to see my screen?
We can make Sam the presenter. Does he have the slides?
Sam's at home. I'm at work. Can you make me the presenter, John Kane?
You're on the. Let's see. Are you on the? It says you're on the telephone.
I am, but I did call. I did gone in through the internet.
Okay.
Through your invitation.
Well, if you're on the phone,
that might be Sam's.
I can.
Oh wait. Okay.
Well,
Bear with us just a minute, please.
Could it be under Sam's invite?
Okay. You should be co-host now. See if you can share your screen.
Are you able to see now? This is a good test drive for next week. I know I went in through the link that was given to me. I could do this over again through my laptop. I'm going to hang up and let me try to do that.
Well, hang on, John. You can also, Mike Colson, if you, we do have the presentation loaded on the agenda, so you can click on that and we can show it, and maybe John can just tell you when to go to the next slide.
Okay.
That would look a little bigger too.
Well,
yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be loading. We're clicking on the link and we're having issues. It just shows a blank screen, unfortunately.
Well, let me take one shot at trying to join in again. So bear with me.
Hang on.
But-
Let me see if I can share my screen here.
All right, we have it on the screen.
Oh, okay. Let me try to get it back on my. Oh, come on, dear. So are you actually seeing my screen, or do you just have the PowerPoint that we can just go from slide to slide?
Just the PowerPoint from slide to slide, because I'm showing it on my screen. So I'll
Okay.
drive it through and you just tell me.
Yeah, well, Tom, we'll do some practicing between now and next week. So there's a cover here. And if we go then to slide 2, they're numbered, the presentation outline.
Got to load just a little bit more here, hopefully. There we go. You see the outline?
Yeah, I could. Tell me when your screen image is up. Okay. Well, very briefly this evening, as Tom mentioned, we had developed last year 3 schemes, and this evening we're going to show you quite a number of other schemes that take advantage of space within the existing courthouse. We've labeled them schemes 4 through 8, and in some cases we have some variations on that. I should preface all of this by saying this is still something of a work in progress. It's been only a few weeks that we have been working on this, and I think every time we take a look at it, we sharpen our pencils and we see a better plan. But this is essentially, in many respects, what we would be presenting next week. And maybe we make some changes from discussions that we'll have with you this evening. While we are finishing up the concept plans, our next step here in the next day will be to reach out to Market and Johnson, who will be doing cost estimating as they did in the past. And they have, as you may be familiar, have a excellent track record in working with the county, and they're headquartered in Eau Claire. So as we develop that budget, they're going to provide us the construction cost, and then we're going to apply as a placeholder another 20%, which would apply to the non-construction costs that are often associated with any construction project. As we go through the options, we know that there may be some additional costs through other additional remodeling in the building. As you'll see when we go from option to option, certain existing departments are very well going to be replaced, and we need to find a place for them to be located. Some design considerations. Now we're on slide 4, Tom.
Okay.
Can you go to 4?
I believe I am.
Yep.
Okay. These are 5 items that we need to be keeping in mind as we develop and review all of these concepts. The SCR 68, the State of Wisconsin Supreme Court, Chapter 68, titled Court Security, Facilities, and Staffing, is the guideline and the requirements that we have to meet in terms of the physical design of the facility. And I know 2 things that come out of that document that we'll talk as we develop these concepts. One is the 3-way separation between the public, the secure, which would be the judge and their staff, and then the restricted, which would be the offenders. And in principle, they should not cross anywhere but in the courtroom. And that's certainly an ideal consideration. Most existing courtrooms don't have that, especially with regards to the movement of prisoners to the courts. Likewise, there are room sizes that we have to keep in mind. We are, as you might recall, matching many of the existing square footages in the present courtroom complex. Specifically, the courtroom will be the same size. We're matching that, but we are working to meet the requirements for the judge's chamber, jury deliberation rooms, et cetera, that come out of Chapter 68. We will need to have a review and approval from the district court administrator. They were involved in the past, and at some point in this process, we need to bring them back in. I alluded to a moment ago that many of these projects that we're going to see in reusing the building will require some form of phasing of the construction, as well as some potential relocation. I pay in particular attention the clerk of court function, and depending upon where the new courtroom will reside, there may be some issues of distance and functionality, but I think that's a conversation in itself that we need to be mindful of. And then the code review, which is something that, that we would do on all of our projects, we need to be mindful of that, specifically related to fire separation. And Tom, if you can go then to the next slide. I take a sip of water. And please, as I go through this, don't hesitate to stop me and ask questions. This particular slide on page 5 came out of a report from last year. We know that the current courthouse is not sprinklered, and we want to be mindful that whatever project comes out of this study, that we don't, what should I say, cause the entire building to have to be sprinklered or with some form of fire suppression. And we can certainly accommodate that, just as you have in the past with the other additions that have been built over the years, HHS and child support. But last year we did meet briefly with Eric Hansen. We talked with him about the project. We described to him the nature of the project, and he indicated that time that the remodeling work that we were discussing would not require that fire suppression or fire sprinkler system. I noted here a moment ago that there is precedent in the building where you have built additions in the past. And I think as we go forward, as we had discussed last year, we would want to bring Mr. Hansen in or his associate, whomever has taken his place if he's no longer there, into the discussion. So that was 5. Let's then go to 6. Tom?
Yep.
And just again, briefly, this question of fire separation. I'll use scheme 1 if you will recall that particular option, and we'll talk more about that one in a minute, just as a reminder. There's this fire separation wall that has to be built separating the new building from the existing, and the new building would be sprinklered. If I go to slide 7, Tom, you'll see just kind of conceptually, and that you can see on the existing building where these fire separation walls exist, particularly on the child support wing of the building. It's a 1 or 2 hour separation. The openings are limited, and it will protrude out above the roof line. This is very conventional. I wouldn't be alarmed by it. It's just something for us to keep in mind. If I go then to slide 8, we'll begin to just talk in a minute briefly about the different options that we're going to discuss. I want to start with slide 9. And I think this, at a very high level, will explain where these different options are going to appear. Options 1 and 2 in the upper right are options that were developed last year as additions to the courthouse. 3 was across the street, more as a courthouse justice center. The options number 4 will be related to the wing that the county clerk, register of deeds, et cetera, are located. 5 will be where zoning is, land records. 6 will be, pardon?
May I ask a question?
Please.
We have the clerk of court, or excuse me, we have the county clerk and treasurer on that plan. We have that on page 17. Does that mean with the drawing, does that mean that the county clerk and treasurer and register of deeds is moving out of that area?
They would have to move out, yes.
Would they move over and what we have is the yellow for the addition? Or is that still part of the courtroom area?
Ron, can we, I don't know if you've gone, I don't know what slide you're looking at. I think, can we explain as we get to the next several slides?
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, good question. So I mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zoning, 6 health and human services, 7 is where the assembly room is, where you are, and then 8 is where the clerk of court is. So as you'll see in these following diagrams, each of these options, with the exception of 6, will require both a remodeling as well as an addition to meet the space requirements that we're talking about. So then let me just do a real brief overview of where we were last year. This is slide 10. Tom? This will be where the addition, the courtroom, the judge's chambers, the holding rooms, court commissioner's offices, judges support staff, all abutting the existing courtroom. That's a diagram of the entire campus. If you go to slide 11, I won't go into the details of this, but the colors each outline a different component of that addition, the blue in particular being the courtroom. I do want to note that, and Tom, I don't know how you can point this out, in this slide 11, there is included in that particular option, there was an additional assembly room of 1,000 square feet, and then a secure lobby vestibule that was also made up a portion of that addition. And I think as we talk through the next options, those two components have really not been, we have not incorporated them into the new design. So there will be something of an apples to oranges comparison in that regard. If you go to slide 12, this was scheme 2. This simply pulled the building away, so we eliminated much of that fire separation. If I go to slide 13, Tom, this is pretty much the same footprint, but it created this courtyard separation between the courtroom that you're present, the present courtroom, and then the new addition. So that was slide 13. Slide 14, just as a reminder of the third option where there was discussion of the new addition connecting the jail, just as a reminder. So now we're going to get into the many options that we've been looking at over the last couple weeks. So there's a picture of the courthouse in slide 15. Slide 17 will be the first of the options that we really want to talk about this evening. You'll see that in this diagram, the green is the wing of the county clerk, treasurer, register, and deeds. That's where they currently are located. There would be an addition required to meet the space requirements, and then these other additions that I'll speak to in a minute when we get to the next plan, the detail of that. So in each of these options, you'll see an overview of the entire courthouse, and then the next plan will be a diagram of what that specific option might look like. So we're using Green Bay Packer colors tonight, the green and gold. The green will represent the remodeled area. I should note that in that space that currently has register of deeds, treasurer, and county clerk, there's some areas noted in the plan that are outlined in red. These are the current vaults that are in that wing of the building. It would be very, very difficult to remove those vaults. We can punch holes into the walls, but to remove them would be entirely difficult because they help support the roof. So in this design, we would want and need to fashion rooms within those spaces, and I think we can do that. So just very briefly in this diagram, you'll see that the outline of yellow would include the courtroom, the judge and their support. The jury might find themselves in the Register of Deeds vault. There are other support areas to the lower to the leading down to the public lobby space. And then the green to the right would be that vehicle sally port and some non-contact visiting booths that bring inmates to the lobby space. And so that's going to be the first option. It's using the county clerk wing with an addition to the west. Let's go then to the next option. This is going to be 4B. This is where we're going to infill this courtyard. So that's slide 19, Tom. I should be telling you the numbers here. I'm looking at them on the screen and I forget that I need to tell you that. So slide 20 is going to show, again, the remodeled area, which is the county clerk wing, and then the addition that fits in between the county clerk wing and the existing courtroom. If we go to slide 21, you'll see that that courtroom actually does fit between the two walls of the existing building. The green area would be for the inmates, the holding rooms, etc. And then they connect into both courtrooms. And then you'll see the other functions that would be in the remodeled former county clerk wing. So that option, yes.
Mr. Kane, then the vaults would also be used for, or renovated for the jury there, do I see, or what do I see there?
Oh, I think what you're seeing is that the jury's bathrooms might be in those.
Oh,
And then the judge, up to the top, the judge and some of their staff might end up where registered deeds is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't want to even suggest that these rooms create a burden. They don't. We can work around them. We can create new door openings, etc. It's just that the roof of those spaces is I believe, a concrete plank that helps support the original roof to that building. I don't know if you are familiar with the history of this building, that when it was constructed, it had a flat roof, and that it was in one of the remodeling projects or additions that the pitched roofs were added. I don't know if that's something that you all know about or familiar with, but that's just part of the condition of the existing building. So let's move along here, John. So that's 4B, slide 21. Let's then go to slide 22, Tom.
Yep.
So I think the importance of this slide is that this expansion that we're going to talk about is going to come out towards the street. And if you look on this photograph to the right, the Human Services building, HHS, is a two-story building, and there's a lower floor and then an upper floor. And our building addition would be on the upper level. And so there is space below that conventional design might suggest that this would be one option that one would want to think about putting in a basement, because you've probably paid for about a third of that basement already because of the foundation walls, as well as any structured fill that would have to be filled in to bring that floor level up to the first floor. So it's just something to be cognizant of this particular option. If we then go to the next slide, this will show you at a high level how that's going to work. Everything is going to be in a new building construction, the addition that I have here, and then the Sally Port piece, the garage, is going to be across the hallway. So if I take you then to slide 24, you'll see that we've been able to get most of the program into that new addition. The courtroom being at the top, the judge's chamber, and the jury. I think we're still missing court commissioner offices and a few other minor program pieces that would have to be found somewhere else in this building, maybe not specifically here. But this is the addition across the hallway from zoning, land records, IT. Let's then go to scheme 6, which is going to be on slide 25. This will be where we're going to take and remodel a portion of the south wing of the building. Now, it could be the lower floor, it could be the upper floor. I think our preference is the upper floor because then it would be on the same level as the other courtroom and what is the main floor of the courthouse. And I think simply in terms of people being able to get to that, find their way to that courtroom. Tom, if I go to slide 26, it does begin to talk briefly about how that floor or that wing might be ordered. The courtroom being in the middle, the judge's chamber, the jury assembly, and other things would wrap around that. This is a design or an option where there are some existing columns that would end up protruding along one side of the courtroom, but I think we can certainly accommodate that. Another thing to think about in this particular option as we talk about that separation issue of moving offenders, there's some placeholders on the diagram up at the top, the Sally Port, some non-contact visiting booths. But I think our thoughts here are that, and maybe this is a drawback to this particular option, we're really not excited about the idea of walking prisoners through the length of the building to get to the courtroom. There is the opportunity perhaps that we can bring them by vehicle around to the south side of the building, come in the lobby space, and then take them up the elevator a half a level to get into the courtroom. So there are a couple options as to how we move prisoners, but that prisoner movement is somewhat compromised in this option because of the distance away from where they currently come in for the first courtroom. Am I going too fast or is this going at a good pace?
You're doing a good job.
Okay. 7 is, I guess I'll say, fascinating. I don't want to offer my opinion. This one could be interesting. 7 is where we're going to try to fill in the other wing or the other courtyard, if you will, with both the addition as well as some remodelings on either side. This one, I think the theme on this one is to say, how can we incorporate the assembly room, I believe the room that you're in this evening, as a courtroom. And I think you can hopefully appreciate that as large as the room is that you're in, it doesn't meet the state's requirements as a courtroom. It could be a court commissioner's hearing room, but it would not work as a courtroom, especially a juried courtroom. So I'm on slide 27. This kind of gives you the overview of the plan. Prisoner movement is likely a consideration here. I imagine that we're talking about prisoners walking over from the jail as they do now, and they come in a door into the existing courtroom. They would perhaps even still use that door and then walk across the hallway into the courtroom. This question of the separation is a challenging one, I think, and it's something that we would certainly have to talk carefully with the district court administrator. The reality of courthouses in Wisconsin is that there are many courthouses where prisoners walk through the hallway every single day. It's certainly not an ideal situation, but it's certainly an existing condition that exists in many courthouses. I think the question for us here is that with the addition of a new courtroom, how stringent and restrictive will they be in that regard in terms of that separation? I don't have an answer for that. Only the district court commissioner can offer that. I can cite by example that this last year, in anticipation of another judgeship in Eau Claire County, we did develop construction documents to take their county boardroom that was relocated to a new part of the courthouse, and thus sat empty. We've remodeled that, at least in drawing form, into a new courtroom. and the inmates are going to walk right down the hallway. So as I say, there is certainly precedent for a county, Eau Claire being that, where they're remodeling existing space for a courtroom, and the offenders will be, walking down the hall with everybody else. So let me stop rambling here. Let's get to 7A, which is page 28. So you'll see, maybe a little hard to see on the diagram, but that yellow outline is the current courtyard. And so that would infill. And the thought in this concept, at least this particular version, is that the new courtroom would take up the assembly space plus the additional space required to meet that space need. We would come to the other side of the courtyard where zoning, et cetera, land records are. That's where the judge, the jury, assembly, the court commissioner's offices all would be located. There are some circulation issues. I think you can see that with the arrows. There's a public hallway that would come down and to the left of the register and probate, or they might come down the hallway that the clerk of court's office is. Two possibilities. That's public access. The inmates, as I mentioned a moment ago, probably would come from across the hallway, make a short path, crossing the hall, and then down into the courtroom. And then the judge is coming from the opposite corner. So from a functionality point of view, it can work. I think for me, the challenge is that of recognizing that part of the courtroom is in the existing building and the other part is not, and what code issues that might come out of that in terms of fire separation, et cetera. This one's not so clean. Maybe that's the phrase I can use. So then we have one other idea in that regard, slide 29. It's the same space. And then if we get to slide 30, it's a little bit better. You'll see again the yellow outline where we're kind of shoehorning the courtroom into that wing or that courtyard. The outline of the courtroom is identical to the current courtroom. I think there's certainly the possibility that we could skinny up the courtroom to make it fit. I think where the challenge might be, there's that area in front of the jury box and the judge's bench and the court reporter called the well, and it gets pretty narrow. I think if we start losing some square footage or some space there, but it's something we can look at if this option makes sense. So again, this is relying on new construction in the courtyard and then extensive remodeling of a portion of the area where CJC and some of the other functions are currently. We're almost done. So then the last two will speak to other options in the wing where the clerk of court is. This first option shows in green the remodeled area, and then there's some additional space. Let me then go, Tom, to slide 32. And you can see that we've turned the courtroom 90 degrees, and so it's filling the width of the wing. I think we can get that to fit. I mean, some of the other little rooms that are to the left of that are attorney conference rooms. I think we could put them in a different place. So I think that this courtroom could fit crosswise. But then again, we've got the other functions, the jury, court commissioner's offices, and judge suite all have to go in. And again, though I haven't spoken specifically about the relocation components, but certainly here now, as you can see, with the clerk of court and those other functions that are currently in that space, including the room that you're in, the assembly room, are all have to move to some other location in the courthouse. We do know there are some existing spaces, especially in the south wing. I think that was option 6. that we might be able to use. But I do have a concern that some of these options are going to displace departments. Now, I know that certainly with the COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of counties revisiting the spaces that they need, and that there's a consideration for people working at home and remotely. And maybe that can simplify or reduce some of the space needs that we would have needed prior to the situation that we're in. But I think each one of these options requires some thought in that regard. So 8B is the one option. I'm on slide 33, Tom, where we are going to cut briefly into the parking lot. So I'm on slide 34. So what we're trying to do here is preserve that hallway that runs down the length of the wing. There's not enough width in the existing building, so we're protruding out into the courtyard and taking probably, I don't know, maybe 10 parking spaces. So then if I go to slide 35, you'll see what that looks like. Again, maybe something of a challenging remodeling, because the courtroom, the large space, half of it's in the existing building and half of it's in new construction. I mean, it can be done. There's just a lot of reworking of the roof construction that would require that to take place. I think, folks, that is our last option. A lot of material in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Kane. This is Supervisor Howard. What are the open areas, the white areas on scheme 8B?
I'm having a hard time understanding you. I apologize.
He's talking about page 34, scheme 8B. Excuse me, page 35, what's the white area she's asking? Turn your phone down.
Just south of register and probate. You're on slide 35.
Yes, to the right of the jury, south of the judge, north of the clerk of courts.
Oh, those spaces that appear to be left over?
Yes.
Oh, somewhere in these plans, we have to find some hallways.
Okay.
So, yeah, qualifier, I would not interpret these diagrams as completed floor plans. I think we use them just as placeholders to know that we can hopefully get these rooms to fit in the spaces that we're outlining. But, you know, taken literally, each of these colored boxes is a room. So, you know, as a next step, once a decision was made as to which direction this thing should take, you know, you would want then to have, you know, more developed floor plan that would, you know, answer some of those questions I think that you're asking. These are, in my mind, high-level concept diagrams. What we're working to do is to try to provide a series of options with some cost information. That's really the scope of the study that we're looking at. We're trying to bring these options kind of up to the same level as the previous options that were developed, but they're still, in my language, they're still very diagrammatic.
I've got a question for you again. Now, was the clerk of courts people talked to about far as them able to aiding or assisting the second courtroom? So we wouldn't need as many of these offices that you have on 8B, the judge area there, one.
Well, my recollection from last year is that, and we did some pretty detailed, I wouldn't call them remodeling plans, but we did do some designs that reconfigured her space because it's not very space efficient right now. That my recollection was that she did not anticipate any additional staff in her department with the new judge position.
Point of clarification there. We have since talked to her as well, and if we build a second courtroom without a second judge and just have visiting judges, she thinks she's okay staff-wise, but she's reached the conclusion that if there is a second judge occupying the second courtroom, that she would need one additional staff person.
And with that judge position come there's a court reporter position that would be required, and maybe one other besides the clerk of court.
Judicial assistant.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I got it.
Yes, Mr. Schuman.
Mr. Kane, this is Tweed. I'm looking at 4A and 4B, and I'm wondering what happens to our existing second courtroom now? And could the people that have been displaced, you know, in scheme 4B,
Go straight south of the lobby with.
yeah, could we move some of those people into that area, you know, without moving them off site?
Oh, so you're talking about the county clerk?
Yep, the treasurer.
Yeah.
I'm really leaning, I don't know where everybody else is, but man, 4B.
4B with addition of this sliding up street south of the lobby.
Yeah. I can't wait to see when the costs come in. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Tweed, it's going to be less than options 1 and 2. Be assured of that.
Not only that, but a better diagram and also a visual, a walkthrough. You know, we've got so many areas here. I think if we walk to them areas and had it, you know what I'm saying? I think that, to me, that makes more sense.
You're looking at 4B?
The paper.
Yeah, she's talking about maybe a walkthrough, John, where she could actually walk through these areas and actually see what it would look like.
I don't understand. Help me. I'm dumb. You mean to take a walk through the building?
Yeah.
To the areas that
Yeah.
we're talking about building onto.
Mhm. Like on the ground and say, over here, you're gonna
Yeah.
have the courtroom.
Oh,
over here,
yeah,
you're gonna
right.
have
There to,
Yeah. So I don't know if you can go to slide 19. That's the area that's being filled in.
That's what she's talking about, go on the ground. You actually outside on the ground and say, this is going here, this is going there.
right.
Oh, yeah, to help try to visualize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, would be a good idea. I'm flipping back and forth between slides. I apologize. I'm not going to tell you what slide I'm on, but I'm bouncing back and forth between 19, 20, and 21. So the question here, is, where will the county clerk, the treasurer, and the register of deeds go? And I don't, Tom and we've talked a little bit. I mean, there is some space. Let me see. I'll take you to, if you can go to slide 26. '26 shows you a floor plan of that south wing. And our understanding is that there is some empty space there. There is some kind of a chess game that's going to have to be played here to move people around. My sense has often been that you're building where departments are located and where they're shared seem to work really well, that the register of deeds and the treasurer, those functions are often quite similar and closely spaced, and by pulling them apart might create something of a problem. But what we need to try to find is a space for them to be relocated. I have wondered about the area below zoning and land records, whether that's a space that could be captured, that we could move them to that location. I apologize, I don't recall exactly what those departments are, but they tend to be more land focused. Would not be the one to recommend that a department leaves this campus, but, and maybe that's part of the conversation, is to ask who could move to a different location and still serve well the county, other departments, and your constituents.
And I think that's going to be the second half of the question. It's going to depend on who gets displaced, whether it's the treasurer, clerk of court, or clerk's area, or, depending on which wing we're going to use, if we're going to go with one of these plans, and who gets displaced, and then we can figure out where they need to go and what other space is available. So there's maybe some other remodeling that would have to occur depending on who gets displaced and where they get placed into.
I just don't feel we should move the current location of Register of Deeds, Treasurer, and County Clerk. What do you guys think? No?
I think they might move straight south of where they're at on the other side of the lobby, which would be across from zoning and land records. And that would allow for the first plan A, 4A, to have the courtrooms right side by side.
Yeah. I like 4.
That's Register of Deeds, Treasurer, County Clerk went on the other side of the lobby, which would be in one plan, he has an addition. That will allow 4A to work.
Now, 4A, Ron, goes out towards Main Street.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking?
Yeah.
So we leave that space alone between the two courtrooms?
Well, they can come across and connect. If they go from the existing courtroom, go straight west, which would go to the Register of Deeds, Treasurer's, and Clerk's office. And you move the Register of Deeds, Treasurer's, and Clerk's office to the south side of the lobby. Mr. Haley.
Yeah, geez, the main one.
I was just curious on these plans. Where are we gonna put our vaulted materials?
We're gonna have to build vaults.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We have to have a place also to build vaults because we have protected stuff that has to stay protected.
Other questions? Ideas?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I've been trying for a while to get in, and I apologize that I have to appear telephonically, but you have to recognize all the committee members, whether they're there or not. When you're ready to call on me, please do.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Olson. Thank you.
Certainly. I guess I had prepared some things on this because it's something that's fairly near and dear to me. And the biggest thing was when we talk about needing a new courtroom, I guess we're all in agreement. I haven't heard anything negative. If you think we don't need a second judge, please go sit in Judge Yackel's courtroom for an hour and a half, and tell me how busy that man is, because it's unbelievable. And if we build it, the state's going to offer us $140,000 a year judge, a $60,000 a year court reporter. They pay a stipend for an assistant. It's the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. As Mr. Kane pointed out, walking prisoners over, he talked about walking a prisoner through the building. We've been walking them across the street in shackles. It's very 1880 of us. I think it's bizarre. I mean, I'd like to look at a tunnel or something along with this, but notwithstanding, you know, the fact that we have jail overcosts of about $270,000 last year, if we had a second judge, those could be alleviated. I think that would be wonderful. They know that goes a long ways towards paying for a lot of this stuff. Mr. Schuman mentioned option 4B that he really liked. That has been what Sawyer County has been looking at for years. We were always told that if we fill in that courtyard, we would need fire suppression in the entire courthouse. Mr. Kane has assured us that it's not true. You do have to repitch both of those roofs because they both do drain towards that courtyard. You have an AC system to move in that yellow area that Mr. Hoff has put on as the addition. And there's a Sally port that was built there. Still a great option, an absolutely great option, because it doesn't really, you know, we do have to find room. And when we talk about moving the clerk down to the basement and registry of deeds to the basement and the treasurer to the basement, while it's called the courthouse, I think everybody would agree that they are pertinent as much as any department to the county. And it would be a shame to, I don't want to say banish, because I don't want to talk ill of those that have offices down there now, University of Wisconsin Extension, surveyors, land and water conservation and forestry. But I think those other departments need to be up front and central with the public. I think 4B is great. I really like 8A, 8B, just because we utilize the small courtroom that's already there and we don't have to move as many people. It's not a huge addition. I think both of those work. And I guess my biggest thing is, in this time that we're in, that I can't look at my constituents and I can't look at the business people that I see and say we are going to spend $15 million like the across the road courtroom additions we're looking at being. I can't do it. I think we definitely need a second judge. We definitely need a second courtroom to put the judge in. But at the same time, times are tough. We got to do what we can to get the judge, get the assistant, get the court reporter, and we'll go from there. That was just my comments. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Ms. Taylor, do you have anything you want to add?
Can I go back to Dale's comment a minute ago?
Yeah.
I don't want to be quoted as saying that. I want to go back to 4. This question of fire suppression and separation, if I take the conversations we had last year with the code official, if this were the option that we would propose, we would go to them. I'm trying to find that picture again. You probably have it up on your screen.
We do. Yes.
Yeah. What page is that? I can't find it now. It's
page 20, sir.
Okay, 20 and 21. What the conversation we had with them in the past was that if we created a firewall around that courtyard, now I apologize, we've never spoken with him about this wing, but what conversations we've had with him are, and I think the code speaks to this, is that if we separate the building with a firewall, then we have to bring that portion of the building, the new construction, up to code. I don't think we have to go into the existing building and bring that up to code from a sprinkler point of view. Now, he might say, and I'm looking at slide 21, he may say, no, John, that's not true. I'm going to make you sprinkle everything that you're remodeling. Because I think in the end, as I'm looking at slide 21, where the treasurer, county clerk, et cetera, register of deeds is, we're pretty much going to gut that space, with the exception of the vaults. And so, you know, the cost to put sprinkler system into that portion of the building, I think would just be part of the construction cost. So again, I apologize. I'm sort of thinking out loud on this. but I would really work hard to avoid having to open that Pandora's box and have to sprinkle the entire building.
Well, certainly, and I asked you that question verbatim in our last county board meeting, Mr. Kane. You know, because that was my understanding, was that that would have to happen, and that's why I asked the question. And I felt assured that that wouldn't happen. So, you know, I looked at this, at your diagrams here, and I kind of penciled some things out. I thought I think you have lots of wonderful designs, but you know, the fire suppression for the entire courthouse would be monumentally expensive.
Oh, hugely monumental. Yeah. We've shared, go back to like slide 6 or slide 6 or even slide 7. These diagrammatically show that fire separation wall. I mean, that would be the argument that we would put forth with the code official.
Yeah, I'm fairly familiar with it. You know, a 2-hour burn. I got that with the blocking and the sheetrock. And I would certainly think that in this day and age that would be enough, especially when the courthouse is 1 block away from the fire department.
I would hope so too. Well, you know, code officials can be fickle. And we would want to go, one would want to go to the code official early on in the planning. I mean, in fact, if it clearly becomes a recommendation by your committee and the full board to go down that path, the next trip would be to go see the code official.
I think it's a fabulous idea. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Amos Dennis had a question.
Oh, just a comment. When we were going through these plans for how long, we were told that we would have to have fire extinguishers, water in the building. If we did that plan you were just talking about, the only way we wouldn't is if we had that wall separation. And that's what we were told. So it's kind of hard to pick a plan until we go and find out. If we do this, do we need to install? You know, I mean, there's a lot of things I don't like to hear. I think we have to know, because that is a huge expense. If we have to come in and put the water, what do you call them?
Sprinklers.
Sprinkler system in the whole building, because we're trying to add on a court. But I remember saying, you know, because other people had that plan too. And we were told that if you did that without that firewall, you would have to.
Any other questions for the committee? Mr. Olson, any more questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I guess, and I apologize for not having questions as much as I did comments. I'm waiting with bated breath to see the cost analysis between 4B, 8A, and 8B.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, any questions or comments?
No, just waiting to see the prices too, so.
Okay. Mr. Huff?
Yeah, thank you. I think what we wanted to do tonight is present these additional options so that you can take a look at them and then make some suggestions on what direction Mr. Kane should go. We didn't want to get too far down the line on, you know, all 8 of them until we pared it down a little bit more, perhaps. If you've got some that you'd like to throw out for sure, so that Mr. Kane can get pricing on just the ones that you think are going to be viable, so that we can present that at the board meeting then on Thursday next week.
Thank you. Mr. Kane, any more comments?
No, I think at this point we'll price them all.
You did a good job describing them. Thank you.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. we'll see you next week.
All right.
And we got to work out the technology, Tom. Maybe we can do our dress rehearsal.
Yeah, we did it good the last time around, so we'll make sure we do it before, and we'll be ready to roll.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
Bye.
Okay. Can I say something, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Are we gonna be prepared to make a decision a week from tomorrow?
No.
I agree. I'm with Ms. Dennis,
No.
because we have not had this is our first look at this. And I know everybody's in a hurry to get this thing going and get it rolling, but what a huge mistake it would be if we don't take our time right now and look, take our time,
I gotta say this again.
listen to all the costs. And I know you think we're just putting it off and putting it off,
Well,
but we don't want to make the wrong decision here.
I just wanna say again, everybody seems to stop right, you know, in that.
No, we're not
statement.
stopping.
No, let me finish. On that
Can you put your
statement,
mask up, please?
Oh,
We can hear you.
in the statement, it says that we have to have the courtroom finished by May of 2023, or there's a small word, very, very important, or have things in the process of. And this right here, to me, meets that or. I know Mr. Paulson is just chomping at the bit to get this bill, but at the same time, I agree, we don't want to, let's get it done.
We need to go to the code people.
There's one, something.
I would just hate to say, okay, let's go with this one and then find out, and that's happened to us.
I think we need a lot more answers before making decisions.
Yes, thank you. And that's the general consensus also.
Agreed.
So we're gonna keep taking it one step at a time and see where we go. I feel like we're moving forward, so I'm satisfied with that.
I just want to ask, am I, like just preaching at the choir or whatever about that word thing? It seems like when I say that, I put it out to the board a couple times, and it's like, yeah, okay, then, all right, let's get the bill, So
No, I think everybody here picked up on the or word.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Dale Olson, I completely agree with Mr. Helwig. I agree 100% with him, but I think we have to show a good faith effort. Have maybe not the billing up, but have plans, have a contract signed, have something like that. I think we have to show we're serious about it. Because otherwise, the state may well pull the pin on us and go to somebody else. Otherwise, I think we're in the way it looks to me from the correspondence I've read. I really think we're in, and I think we need it.
Thank you. Mr. Helly?
I just want to say, Mr. Olson, I agree with you also. We're in the right direction, and we do have to really show them that we're going for it and everything. So, yeah, thank you.
With that, we're gonna go to number 12, future agenda items. I've been asked if meeting time, the time for the Public Works Committee to meet. So we're gonna put it on the agenda next month, and we choose to make a motion and choose to leave it the same, but there's been a request for that, so we'll put that on the agenda for next month.
I requested it.
What do you think of the
I am, and if no one can do that, I'm gonna go right back to that guy. 'Cause I have other commitments, and I didn't want this committee, not because I love you guys, but if we can't do it earlier in the afternoon, then
Afternoon's fine.
I can't do it.
Just mornings, before 10.
So we'll put it on the agenda for next month. Number
Mr.
13.
Chairman, you're gonna put this front and center on your next month, probably then. Yeah.
For some reason, we take care of it, county board, but I anticipate it will come back here.
Yeah, good.
But I think it should be good discussion regarding it. It's on the agenda for full board. I
Right,
expect a
and
lot
then
of
the
discussion.
virtual, walking around and looking.
I like that idea.
You know. I mean, I'm not stupid, but I just wanna,
No, there's,
I wanna see it. I wanna visualize it.
well, I would really like this to be discussion only at the county board.
Oh, yeah, great.
Because
No
I
action.
really feel it's gotta come back here.
Definitely put that word on it, discussion.
Yep.
I like to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak their piece.
Yes,
Yeah.
That can
yes,
certainly be done.
yes.
So no action. Right?
Okay, sorry.
We're not in a position
Okay.
to add.
So as matters for discussion, we covered that. Thank you, folks. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Huff.